Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the UnWokable podcast. I am your host, UnWokable, and I am joined today by Aleks Djuricic. He, I had to ask this guy to be on today because he is one of the few voices, it seems, that is actively pro Trump. And as my audience will know, um, I tend to lean DeSantis, and I've told Alex this, but I am seeing some disturbing things in the force, so to speak, on social media, and it just seems to be moving all one direction right now, which always bothers me because I don't like being manipulated. Alex, first, thanks for being here. Really appreciate that. Tell everybody who you are and what you do in this world.
Well, first of all, Mark, thank you so much for the invite. I'm really excited to be able to talk about this because I think, as you said, that this is a really important topic here that needs to be discussed, and kind of the right needs to have in the back of our minds, kind of going forward here, as we'll talk about. There's a lot in play. And second of all, let me say you did a fantastic job there with my last name. I I know it wasn't that easy for you there, so you did really good. So we're already
Appreciate
off
that.
to a
Appreciate
great
that.
start. Yeah, as you said, I'm Aleks Djuricic. I'm an attorney, general practice attorney based in Indianapolis. I'm originally a Serb from Croatia. My family and I immigrated to the States, to Chicago, which has a large Serbian American community. Back at the start, right at the start of the war in the former Yugoslavia, what was supposed to be a vacation turned into a lifelong home, and I'm super excited and very honored and happy to be here in America, because I think my life would have been a lot different. After that, I grew up in Chicago, kind of in two worlds. I was an American part of the time, and part of the time I was Serbian, and I'm very happy about that because it gave me a different sense of the world. I was able to view things through different lenses, and I think that kind of stuff comes really important now with the things we're going to talk about. After, my goals were always kind of going into politics, into law, and so I earned my Bachelor of Arts in Political Science at DePaul. Then went on to got married, went on to law school, and moved out to Indianapolis with my wife, and we are now here in Indianapolis. I was working for a firm for a little bit, and as things started, that was I graduated right during COVID. So I was kind of robbed of my commencement speech. I'm still kind of salty about that because it would have been one of those hits on YouTube. But,
Yeah.
I expected to kind of be with this firm that I really loved, and I clerked at, and I was there, and, the 2020 elections happened, and I just noticed things changing in our culture, in our country, and I didn't feel comfortable being silenced. And not that my employer was silencing me, but I felt the responsibility to them, and I didn't want to be silenced. So I decided that I would leave the firm, start up my own practice, be able to kind of speak my mind when I felt it was needed, be able to approach different opportunities. And so started my own firm. That's been exciting. But I've been able to follow everything that's going on in politics and law and culture, be able to speak out about it. And I'm very happy about that. It hasn't been easy, but it's been great because now I have the opportunity to speak with guys like you and do all the interviews I've been doing with Serbian TV. And part of that is because of the background I had. I also was a co-founder of the Serbian American Leadership Conference, which was an organization that was intended to kind of increase civic engagement in the Serbian American community. As you probably know, and probably most people know, Serbs weren't portrayed in the best of light, very similarly to kind of how the Russians are portrayed in the media today. And so part of that was we didn't have good lobbying in DC. And so the goal was let's kind of organize and find a way that we can have a voice and get involved. And through that, I gained a lot of experience in Congress, with the State Department, with members of Congress and their staff. So I got an inner picture of how that works. And so, who knows what comes down the line. I'm looking forward maybe a congressional run down the line at some point, but it's been quite a journey.
Well, I mean, this is America, man. You can do it, and that's, I'm really interested in your background in terms of how it might relate to what we're seeing today in the United States. And I'm gonna jump into the Trump stuff, but I have to ask this question because the word balkanization comes to mind.
Yeah.
Okay, and you, with your background, you in Serbia, it seems that we're under it seems that we have undertaken the beginning stages or the middle stages of an American balkanization, where we're not just being divided down the middle, left and right. Now we're seeing divisions, strong divisions amongst the right, um, where the left seems to be a little more unified, but everybody is talking civil war, let's split up, national divorce, let's do this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what makes the United States is the United States, right? It's the fact that it's united and that we have a
Correct.
federalist system, and we can agree to disagree and still live in parts of the country and still say, hey, we're all Americans, right? So
Yeah.
let me just jump in with this question, because I want to just let you go on this for a second.
Sure.
Balkanization, is what I'm saying making sense? Do you see this kind of divide, and how do you think that it could negatively affect America in the future?
I absolutely see a lot too many similarities and too many comparisons on that. And part of the reason that I started speaking out, I even tweeted back. It was 2 years ago, actually Brett Weinstein retweeted it. That pointing that exact fact out. That what my fear was is that we are heading towards this balkanization, and that's where we're at. And so,
Mm-hmm.
to tell you exactly why. So, the former Yugoslavia was a similar project to America in many ways. It was comprised of several different ethnic groups. It was comprised of several different faiths and religions. And those were kind of part of the reason that that's the case is because they were at a crossroads of the East and the West. So it was a clash of civilizations, and all those cultures created a lot of conflict over time.
Mm-hmm.
And the Yugoslavian project itself, kind of right before World War I, was this idea where, we have these differences, but ultimately we are more similar than we are not. And the idea behind the formation of Yugoslavia, once we kind of broke away from the Ottoman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was let's come together. And once Yugoslavia kind of came together, they established a new identity in a way. So we became Yugoslavian in the way that Virginians became American. Serbs became Yugoslavian the way that Floridians became American, Texans became American. And so you still retained, what makes you a Texan, right? We know
Right.
that there's like a distinct culture in Texas, but you were still had a unifying idea under this nation. And that was what we had in America. And when Tito passed away, there were malicious actors that saw the ways that they could pinpoint the issues that were structural, not related to ethnicity, not related to faith, but structural issues that they had been the catalyst for, or that they felt that they could capitalize on. And I think that's what we are exactly seeing in the United States. We have our nation has a lot of problems. We have economic, foreign policy, internal, and what we're seeing is for votes or for deflection, we are seeing the media, corporate press, as a conduit of that, fomenting these divisions. Now, what I don't think they're understanding is, yes, in the short term, maybe that's going to work for you, but in the long term, you're going to get Yugoslavia, and you're going to get what's 10 times worse than Yugoslavia, in the fact that there's far more different groups, far more ideologies that can cause a lot more conflict and bloodshed, unfortunately.
Well, and that's exactly, this is exactly the insight I was hoping you would give. And I've followed your tweets for a while, and we've DM'd back and forth, but now let's jump into how this might relate to the division on the right between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, because it seems like almost immediately, now you can give Trump some credit for this, with his comment, Ron DeSanctimonious, which in the grand scheme of things is a very light Trump kind of dig at people. But it seems that now the DeSantis camp, or the DeSantis influencer camp, which is just massive on Twitter, I don't know if you can see it, I can see it everywhere,
Absolutely.
Has grabbed that one little comment and ran with it, and it's full DeSantis against Trump. And the comment I always get when I'm like, hey guys, what are you doing? or if I say, well, I'd love to hear DeSantis's views on, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell going after trying to remove MAGA Republicans, or, whatever. It's, well, DeSantis isn't running. Well, you guys are running for him. And I mean, it's
Absolutely.
massive on Twitter right now. It's massive. Every other tweet is somebody, a big influencer, not a small one, but a big one, saying, it's got to be DeSantis. It's just like in chorus. And so in the
Matt Walsh,
context
Ben Shapiro, the big
Yeah.
Cerno, they're kind of leading the charge on that.
They really are, and that's okay to have your opinion, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's completely fine. But when I see a unified chorus, right? And I said, I tend to, at least before all this, I'm trying my best to remain 50-50 because we have a long 2 years ahead, right?
That's right.
But when I see a giant chorus of all of some established influencers and then some very recent, very new, like go from 0 to 100,000 followers in a month and a half kind of influencers, all preaching the same message in concert, it bothers me a little bit. And so bringing that to the balkanization issue, it seems that we could have a situation here where we have a new establishment right, fortified under a, inflated influencer kind of presence, pouncing on the very thing that, say, the Lincoln Project was saying about Trump, that the the left was saying about Trump for his entire 4 years of presidency. Did you notice anything like that? Or could you speak to anything like that in terms of balkanization and what we may fear, and give us some words of caution for these influencers who keep pushing this on the right now?
Look, I think there are a couple aspects to that. Part of it is we live in this polarization era in general, and this kind of rah, I'm gung ho for my team, and there's for some reason an inability to be nuanced or think with nuance, and so I think that's part of, like, if we're looking at it from a bigger picture. I think from a step down is, I think a lot of these people didn't like Trump in the first place.
Yeah.
And now they see a moment to kind of attack him, and they see an opportunity to kind of nip him at the bud before he builds up more momentum as the next few months or next year kind of go ahead. So I think there's that aspect. I don't know if there's really a connection with like more the balkanization. I think the threat is, and I think this is the main debate here. Is who is the establishment figure? And is the establishment figure DeSantis, or is it Trump?
Or is it either?
Is it either, or is it either?
Right.
Deep down, I really believe that. I hope that neither of them are.
Right.
One of the guiding posts, being Serbian and Serbian American, and having. Look, we Serbs saw this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
We tried to explain how these things worked, how narratives were manufactured through the corporate press to push official narratives, and how they are, because we had a different perspective, because we had alternate media that were kind of giving different information. We had family members that were actually there experiencing and seeing these things, and they're seeing a totally different picture from the one that's being portrayed. And then at the same time, it's a good guiding post as well is war is ugly and dirty anyways.
Yeah.
There is no good side in any war, not in any of the wars that we're involved in, not any of the wars that Russia's involved in or anybody else. And so when you have somebody that's, when you have a picture that's gung-ho, this is the good guy only, you start to question. And so that there's a lot of that here kind of going on. And there's this painting the other side as completely establishment or not. And, regardless of whether it's Trump or DeSantis, we can expect that the left and the corporate media and special interests most likely are going to be attacking both of them. I mean, we've seen it in Florida for sure.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's that they attacked DeSantis the same way they attacked Trump. They attacked DeSantis as a MAGA Republican, right? I mean, because there's a pretty clear connection between DeSantis and Trump, both politically and philosophically. And it just, what I'm worried about is I think Trump lit his own fuse. I think when he came out and said, whatever he's going to, but this is what Trump does, especially when he knows that this guy has been laying the groundwork. DeSantis has been laying the groundwork for a run behind the scenes, and Trump doesn't really, and that's okay. That's his right. He should. I would love to see the two on stage together, fight it out, right? Make your points and let the best man stand, right? But then make sure that we haven't burned down the house, so to speak, and played right into the Lincoln Project's hands, played right in, because that's a disturbing part for me is I see some of the quote DeSantis people preaching the same message about Trump that I'm seeing on MSNBC at the moment. And that's disturbing to me because it makes me believe that whether DeSantis wants it or not, he's going to be painted as the establishment shill, so to speak, right? He's going, and whether he deserves that moniker or not, because you can't get any more anti-establishment in practice than Trump. I mean, he's made his whole career, his whole political life has been, I'm raging against the machine, so to speak. So with that in mind, do you think Trump did his job? First of all, do you think Trump should have announced this early? Do you think Trump should have announced it early? And if he did, and if so, or if not, do you think that he did his job in that speech? What do you think of his announcement?
So I think there was a lot, I think, of great points that you brought up there. First, let me preface this so people can understand. I'm a big fan of both, as we kind of said earlier. And I see if it's Trump this time, I see DeSantis as being the next guy in line. Among others, I think that's one of the positive things about the right. That's what we have to keep in mind. We have a team and B team that I feel confident with us going forward here.
We have Democrats a deep bench. We have a deep bench.
100%. And so, you can back both of them out. I feel confident with a bunch of others that are coming down the line. So that's first of all. And, kind of the idea with, with the DeSantis thing, it's, so with the Trump speech, first, let me say, I didn't like him coming out and saying that before even the midterms. And I'm a fan of Trump. Me strategically, I that wouldn't be what I would have done. Right. At the same time, I also understand, like you said, I think he's very well aware that DeSantis raised $200 million, and of that $200 million, he's got $90 million in the bank, and Trump's only got $69 million in the bank right now, going forward into
and they're raising money from the same people, guys. That's the other part, and so it's like. Money talks, and BS walks. Well, what they say.
Interestingly, it's kind of switching. We're looking at in terms of where the money's coming from, and I think that's where a lot of this establishment talk is coming from. Because it's easy for Trump to kind of say now, like DeSantis is the establishment figure, because Ken Griffin, for one, is now throwing his support behind DeSantis and his money. We got Stephen. From Blackstone Group, shares them in, I think, I can't remember his exact last name. I mispronounced it, probably like mine. Blackstone Group, he's kind of supported now DeSantis. Rupert Murdoch has said explicitly he's not going to support Trump. He'll support DeSantis, and he said he'd be willing to support the Democrat. And so there's a good reason to believe maybe that this establishment and the fear that the establishment is built into even the right is now causing everyone, even that wasn't establishment, to kind of support.
Right. Well, no, I think you're hitting on something. Is that everybody has been trained now to follow the money, right? And it's okay. What big endorsements are you getting? When are they coming out? All of that. That's such a good point. And I think that's what is kind of feeding the DeSantis narrative that he could be, more establishment than Trump, right? Is because you've got, kind of Paul Ryan jumping out in the fray and saying, well, we're not going to support Donald Trump, right? And you can't get any more establishment Republican than Paul Ryan. And if he's not supporting Donald Trump, who's he going to support? Liz Cheney? She's not going anywhere. You know what I'm saying? She's not going. It's going to be one of these two guys, right? It's going to be one of these two guys. And
then at the same time, you have Lindsey Graham yesterday tweeting out support for Trump's speech. And
Right.
I was like, this is the Twilight Zone. Where
Yeah.
exactly are we? Who? And I
Well,
mean,
and
again,
that's what it come down to me is that when Trump, okay, I didn't agree with Trump's coming out and making that thing right before, making that comment right before the election. Granted, and this is a point I made when I did a couple of videos on it, was he was not going to hurt DeSantis. DeSantis was up 14 in Florida. Charlie Crist could have been, a dead body and done better. And I mean, look at Fetterman, right? I mean, he could have, and nobody was beating Trump or beating DeSantis at that point. But what I did see, what bothered me, was Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh comes out and he's like, he's crying and making this huge deal about unity and all of this stuff when he knew it wasn't going to hurt Trump. He knew that, or hurt DeSantis. He knew that it wasn't going to hurt, the other Republicans that were endorsed, because all these are localized elections. This wasn't a general election. But that's what started to nip me in the craw a little bit. That gave me my spidey sense going off. Was here is a chorus of the loudest people on Twitter, on social media, saying it's got to be DeSantis, it's got to be DeSantis, and they did it in unison. They did it and that bothers me in terms of the balkanization issue, because then you have a new establishment right pushing a division, claiming they're not pushing a division. That's not okay. I don't like manipulation.
Absolutely. And I think that's what, kind of getting to Trump, I think that's what set off his senses as well. Mm-hmm. That DeSantis maybe had a hand in it, whether or not that's the case. And I really, really hope it's not. And I want to believe that it's not at this point. But I think that's what set it off. And he responded, we have to understand, he's responded the only way he's been able to. Because none of the media, none of the corporate press is going to give him the coverage. None of the high-profile influencers, other than, let's say, Rick Grinnell, is going to give him the push that he needs on these social media avenues, which have become essentially the most influential, Twitter itself, the most influential platform. So he's got to kind of attack from the side and use Truth Social and kind of speak directly and attack in that way.
But here's my problem. Let's bring it back to balkanization for a second. Trump won the 2016, election because he utilized what was the unified public square. Since 2020, since he was banned, we've had a balkanization of social media. We've had you've got Truth Social, you've got Getter, you've got Parler, you've got Facebook, but Trump is actively not allowed on Twitter. He's not allowed on Facebook, but even if he was on Twitter, this is what I wanted the Trump people to understand. He's got to get back on Twitter if they allow him back on, whether it's good for his business model or not, because if you're on Truth, it's a completely different world than Twitter. I mean, it is, if you jump back and forth, you've got DeSantis camp on Twitter and you've got Trump camp on Truth. And then you've got echo chambers within each that feed one or the other. And so I equate it to the Tower of Babel. It's like we've all now we're speaking different languages, but I think the balkanization metaphor looks it's actually more, it applies better because we're all still here. We're all still around, but we've actively been segregated, man. And that, I think, makes it impossible for either DeSantis to get the Trump people if he's going to need to, right?
Bingo.
Or Trump to get the DeSantis people, right?
Yeah, and not only that, it's if any of these influencers listen to this, you don't want to be the guy that gets a tweet screenshotted 2 years from now, attacking him, and then you coming out and supporting him. It looks, that just doesn't look good. And so that's not what drives me. I mean, part of it, I keep that in the back of my mind, but I still really like both of them. But even if you don't like Trump or you don't like DeSantis, kind of keep that in mind, because ultimately we're going to have to put our weight behind either one of them two or whoever might come down the line. 2 years is a long time. A lot can happen and change in those 2 years. It might not be either of them. And one of the positive things for DeSantis was today, he was asked about it and he was like, look, we just had the election.
Yeah.
Like, cut it out.
Yeah.
Let's wait. And
he looked like the adult in the room. I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I thought it was one of the best things. It was kind of nonchalant, but I thought it was one of the best things that he said. You know, one of the things I would have liked to see, and I know you saw the one kind of longer thread that I
Mhm.
put together of like what I would like Trump DeSantis to say is kind of come up more as a leader and kind of speak out in a sense. You know,
Right.
tone down the attack dogs from within our own party and our own movement
Right.
and the right.
But here's the thing, where Trump, let me hit on that for a second, because
Yeah,
just to
please,
highlight what you're saying is
please.
that Trump came out himself, and obviously he is the loudest speaker box for all of Trump, all of MAGA, whatever you want to call it, right? But his influencers did not follow suit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Rick Grinnell didn't come out. You didn't have Mike Lindell. You didn't have Poso coming out, Jack Posobiec coming out and speaking ill of DeSantis.
Right.
But what you had in DeSantis world was the complete opposite. It was all of the DeSantis people started piling on Trump, right? All of the influencers, while DeSantis kind of played Joe Biden and sat in the wings and just didn't say anything. And so it was like this weird flip. And that, to me, that's what I don't like. DeSantis coming out and defending himself, do that, or stay quiet, do that. But don't have a bunch of influencers going after Trump, right? And accuse him of, disunity and hurting the election when it wasn't. And when I really don't believe that's what happened.
Right.
But you going out and doing more damage on the whole because you're reaching more people than just one comment. And your editorialization of the comment, right, is actually doing the opposite. It's a weird kind of almost woke flip of narrative that bothers me really, really badly.
I think that's a very astute observation. I think that there's something kind of different. So it's interesting because Trump came on the attack, but the people that are supporting Trump aren't really doing the attacking, and
Yeah.
there is this like sense of, I think, within the Trump side. The side people that are leaning Trump. I know, at least me, I'm still leaning a little bit of Trump, but I think there's like this sense of loyalty, and I think that's characterizes the MAGA movement. And what we become is, we're fighting to the last man, and we're fighting. We're not giving up, and I think that there's like this sense in that that the Trump leaning people are more focused on that, and then the DeSantis crowd is in a way, it almost seems like they want to find a scapegoat. So they don't like Trump. They want to find a scapegoat. The easiest scapegoat out there is, let's pile on the guy that everyone says is okay to pile on. Not Mitch McConnell, not Kevin McCarthy, just the guy that is the easiest target. And then no one's going to come at me and do all this stuff.
I think when you talk about guys like Ben Shapiro was, critical of Trump in 2016. He's been critical of him, but he's always had his issues with him, right? And I understand those, and I think he honestly believes, pardon me, that DeSantis will make a better candidate, just in terms of the things that he doesn't agree with about Trump when it comes to basically mean tweets or the way he operates. But we must remember, just to play devil's advocate to that, we must remember that that's part of what made Trump successful. And it seems to me that the DeSantis crew is trying to go after what made Trump successful and what made that movement successful. And using a bit of the Lincoln Project, Never Trump message to do it. And I think that's harmful. And then you have an illusion. So I'm going to throw up this. This is a good question. From Jovan here. So do you think, in this same realm, now Mike Pence is throwing his, hat out there, right? And he seems to be representing, do you think Mike Pence's new book and about the January 6th events, which seemed very well timed, right? This all seemed that's the other part about this. I don't like manipulation, and I can see a message calendar from, 100 miles away, right? That Mike Pence is jumping out. And do you think this is going to have an impact on Trump's candidacy? Because it seems like it's unifying with the Ben Shapiro message or the Ian Chong message that you see just running out. There's just DeSantis good, Trump bad.
Being from Indiana, I got to be careful, but I'm not a guy that's careful. As I said at the beginning, Mike Pence, I don't think is going to be relevant in any way. I don't think his book is going to have any impact on how people perceive Trump. I think a lot of people perceive Pence as kind of being a traitor. I'm going to be quite honest. I think that's the perception. Doesn't mean that I necessarily feel that. I get the sense of that, because he was, just a little bit before the election in 2020, he was one of the guys that was going home about, preserving the election integrity and making sure that we do these elections right and all this stuff. And then he comes, all the stuff after the election, November of 2020, he just kind of flips. And it was almost, was he the establishment guy kind of there the whole time? I think he was part of the deal for Trump to be an establishment guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I think, and let me couch this because I think,
please, yeah,
I think Pence actually did the only thing he could have done constitutionally on that day. There's nothing quite in the Constitution that would have given him the power to just unilaterally, now he could have, that's all a big discussion, but he made the decision he made. And I don't blame him for the decision he made, because I think he would have had a constitutional crisis, the likes of which we would never be able to, it would take a long time to come back from if he would have made the other decision at that point.
And a possible civil war.
Right, exactly. And that's what I'm talking about. Like and Trump in that moment, I think was overplaying his hand, but I agree with you that Pence is not going to be a factor in the actual election. He's not going to be a factor in the actual primary election, because even if he runs, but he's a factor right now because of the narrative that we're talking about. Because now you have, it's DeSantis good, right? DeSantis not crazy, Trump crazy. All of a sudden, here comes Mike Pence with his book coming out right at the right time, going on ABC, and he grabs that 10%, that might have a doubt of the Trump nation, right? Of the MAGA crowd, that top 10% that could go the other way and goes, guys, look, DeSantis is Trump without the Trumpiness, without the baggage. That's where I think that Pence might be influential, is not down the road. It's right now.
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. I just think, because even the Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, Cerno, I don't think they're big fans of Mike Pence either. And I think that their narrative in terms of January 6th has been kind of aligned with Trump's position on the committee and
more aligned.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. More aligned. Yeah. And so I wouldn't see it as in that sense that they're going to automatically flip. It might have a little bit of an impact. We'll see when it comes out. But again, I just don't think Pence has that influence. I think he's going to be a great point for Rupert Murdoch and Fox News, and the corporate press are going to push it, of course, and that might provide the boost. I think Pence, some of the pre-election polling showed him about 5% to 10% maybe of support. So there's a possibility that could increase. But in terms of hurting Trump, I just don't see that him or his book kind of make an impact on that.
Well, and I don't know if do you watch Timcast IRL, Tim Pool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Did you see Milo Yiannopoulos on there?
I did not get the chance to see that one.
Oh my gosh, I did a video kind of breaking it down, and I was on Timcast, I don't know, a month or two ago. And it's, first of all, let me just couch this for a second. There's a reason why Milo Yiannopoulos was kicked off social media. And I think it did. I mean, he was obviously provocative, but I think it had more to do, honestly, with his ability to grab a conversation and just hold the floor, right? Because as somebody who has been on that set, in that room, Tim Tim runs that room. He's very professional. He knows what he's talking about. It is his show. He can control that room without saying a word. He can throw up his hand and everybody knows, shut up. And Milo Yiannopoulos completely took over Timcast. Just completely took over Timcast that day. And in doing so, made a point. First of all, he made a point explicitly, which was, once Trump comes out and gets his mojo back, which he said that, Trump seemed a little bit whiny to him, which I could see that, right?
Yeah.
But once he gets his mojo back, that there isn't, not DeSantis or anybody else can compete with him because he has this X factor. Some will call it cult of personality. I think that's a pejorative. I think it's a narrative, demonization, because guess who else had that? Barack Obama had it.
Right,
Kennedy
absolutely.
had it. Reagan had it. It's just kind of an X factor of leadership, right? But
that's how you win. That's how you get a popularity contest.
yeah. It's what makes Mike Pence, and what makes Donald Trump, right? Correct. I mean, is there's a personality there, but he also exemplified his point, because I've been in that room with Tim and Luke, who are smart guys who do this all the time. And these are guys that can, both of them can grab a room and hold the floor in a formidable space. Milo Yiannopoulos just trounced them. He just laid them all out and held the floor for the entire 2-hour episode, because he has a little sliver, as he said, of what Donald Trump has, right? Which is the ability to grab the narrative. It's the ability to grab the room. How much of a factor do you think that's going to be in the next 2 years?
I think that's going to be a big factor. I think another astute observation, because that one of the complaints that people have had, even the pro DeSantis people, is that DeSantis, I guess, can come off as bland to some people. I think he's not the extroverted version of Trump, like Trump, but he's got still outgoing, and he's tough, and he's unafraid to speak his mind and to challenge reporters and others. So I think from that sense he's good. But I think one of the things that they try to paint is that he doesn't have the personality. So that'll be, right, I'm sure, something that maybe I wouldn't say maybe the charisma would be probably the better term that DeSantis needs.
He doesn't have a. It's interesting, because I'm a conductor. Like, I use my hands, like, literally to communicate, right? And so I watch people's hands when they talk. And Trump has the whole but DeSantis has mirrored that exact same mannerism. He can be Trump. It's spooky to me, because I watched older videos of him, not as much with the hands and with the with the kind of gait, but since he has gotten into the national conversation at COVID and things like that, I don't know if he just watched too many Trump videos. I don't know if he's got a coach that's like, all right, guys, let's get, which is fine, but let's do small things that say Trump reminds me, or DeSantis reminds me of Trump. And you can do that visually. So he'll wear the long red tie. He'll do all the hand things. When he gets attacked, he attacks back. That's when he has a personality. The other times when he's not being attacked, it's a little bit bland, but it seems that he's just got enough of Trump.
Yeah.
It could dig into it a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah. And I think that's why people see DeSantis as a better candidate, is the fact that he can balance maybe the two in a way that Trump necessarily can't. And one of the things I would say, I got the arm waving too. I think that's the Serbian, and he's got the Italian. So I think there's a little bit of that in there. And but also you got to remember, DeSantis is a smart guy. He is a Yale undergrad, Harvard law attorney. He's a district attorney for a while. He was in the JAG Corps. He knows, he can learn, he can study, he can put on a performance when you give a speech. That's part of the role that you do. You learn that in law school, one of the things that you do. And so he's really good with that. And that's actually not to sidetrack too much, but one of the reasons that I, in many ways, think that DeSantis is a better candidate. I think he's a lot more articulate. And I think
is. Absolutely.
Being able to, and this is the key factor. We know that I know that Trump's got the right views, and that he believes in exactly what he's going to do. He's anti-establishment. He's pro-American working class. He's going to, everything that he says he's going to do, he's going to do. But one of his big problems is he cannot articulate it in a way that he needs to. Because in some of these cases, these are complicated issues. And you know that very well, being UnWokable, right? If you're talking about woke ideology, or if you're
Yeah.
talking about gender ideology, if you're talking about CRT, if you're talking about transhumanism, what is the gender ideology leading us to? What agenda is it pushing? You have to be able to explain these things. You can't.
Right.
One of the problems with Trump is that he can't explain it. He doesn't do a good enough job. He knows it, but he cannot articulate it. And
well, let's talk about that
ramble,
for a second.
repeat. Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second, because remember when Trump banned CRT, and then it was not long after that, right, that Trump went to debate Biden in the only debate they had, right? And Trump gets up there and gets the question, why are you going to ban credit? And he couldn't. He knew, I think he knows, but he couldn't articulate it, because he's a marketer, which means that he's a catchphrase machine, and he's good at selling a message that not necessarily diving down deep into the message, right? And I will blame, let me gird my loins here for a second. An old friend of mine, Chris Rufo, because Chris Rufo's the same way. He's got more ability to articulate things than Trump does, obviously. Smart guy, real smart guy. But he is a marketer extraordinaire. And he's the one that approached Trump with the issue. Trump grabs the issue, does the right thing. Now, I think Trump would have done better to actually ban the apparatus, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is what is, but he was on the right track, right? He was on the right track. But you hit on something here, that Trump does not have the ability to go below, at least on the stump, right? To go below the more superficial aspects of a message.
Yes.
And sell it the way that he might need to if he gets caught like he was on a debate stage like that, right? That is a huge, huge point in DeSantis' favor, is that he does have that ability. He has the in-depth legal education. He has the in-depth Ivy League education, but that also hurts him, Alex.
Yeah.
Yale grad. He's a Harvard law guy.
You're right. The secret society guy, right?
Right. I mean, this is George Bush country, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're in Florida, Jeb Bush country, and you have the same degrees as, Bush 40, George W. That sends off a lot of red flags for people, man.
No, it absolutely does. But in that sense, I would look at, I did some digging a little bit before, and I was kind of just looking at his policies. And if you go down his policies, he's nowhere near Bush on education, on immigration, on all of these things. DeSantis is very much aligned with the anti-establishment.
Hold on a second. Hold on. So let's talk about the education piece for a second, because education, we got to remember that the two states, and this is what I do most of the time, right?
This is your MO.
Yeah, this is my little wheelhouse. But education, in terms of where we're seeing education today, was created by the Bushes, and the houses for them are Florida and Texas, right? No Child Left Behind, Common Core, all of those things were birthed from the George W. Bush and the Jeb Bush brain trust, right? And which is the same place that school choice comes from. And I don't want to have that argument right now. I'm really trying to stay agnostic. But Trump's person, Betsy DeVos is very much a school choice advocate. That's fine. But it seems to me that has become the new establishment position in terms of education. Okay, I just want to talk about that. Is that I'm interested to see if Trump is still there on school. He probably hasn't even thought about it. It's probably not even on his radar. But DeSantis is. DeSantis, has made Florida a 50-50 or more school choice state, right? So in terms of education, that is the new establishment position.
I hate to interrupt. Would you be able to just do a quick 1 minute explanation of why you see that? Because this is a new thing to me. I've always perceived it as a kind of anti-establishment thing. So with your experience, could you just give a quick explanation of why you believe that?
why I believe that school choice, I think it's the new right establishment position that anybody who is anybody right now, and I'm not going to speak to the merits of it because I have issues and questions. I'm moving because when I see people in my own state coming out threatening assassination against people who are pushing school choice, candidates I've pushed, that hits me. And it's like, okay, this is a little nuts, right? And I have issues, right? I have questions about school choice when it comes to data mining, when it comes to, issues like that. But I'm not immovable. I'm not dogmatic, right?
Right.
When I see it, some of it aligned with kind of the globalist UN kind of push. When you got Jeb Bush's hand in there, not necessarily George W., whatever about him, but when you got Jeb in there, it makes me a little nervous. That's on the superficial range. But there's no mistake. One cannot make the mistake to say that all of the establishment, new right Republican leaders have jumped on the school choice train, for better or worse, right? And so that to me, and you've even got Democrats doing it. When you see Tulsi Gabbard, who just is no longer Democrat, but you've got the kind of middle of the road, center left Democrats that have all, basically said, I'm not woke. I don't know if I'm a Republican, but I'm definitely not a Democrat anymore. They're all preaching that same message, which is school choice good. There's a case to be made there. That's where I see the unification of school choice around kind of a new establishment position.
Setting off a red flag.
Right. Well, I don't know if that it's a red flag. My red flags aren't having anything to do with the label, it being establishment. Because you can have establishment if the right takes and makes some of the Trump message, which I think they have, whether it comes to immigration or it comes to draining the swamp, so to speak, those kinds of things have become kind of a new establishment. They've grabbed that. It's a populist movement, right?
Yeah.
I'm just making the point. I guess I'm making my own point. Is that DeSantis grabbing or being establishment isn't necessarily a bad thing, because what is determined to be establishment is changing a little bit. That's what I'm trying to. But it's all a narrative kind of trap. It's a sea, right? And it's constantly moving, and nothing is settled. That's what makes it dangerous right now. And I don't know if I went off or answered your question, but school choice is an establishment, a new right establishment point of view, for better or worse. That's my.
I love that you brought it up, because I think that's an important debate. Part of the reason we saw 18 to 29 in this election were one of the main factors.
Yes, they were.
The result of that is the educational institutions have been captured by woke ideology. And now we are starting to see the consequences of that. So the right, for better or worse, we have to find alternatives, whether that's homeschooling, school choice, or doing something to change the way some of these new legislation that states are passing. To stop that, we have to do it, because otherwise we are going to lose more and more generations. And we're only beginning to see the effects, because 18 to 29. I tweeted recently in law school. I loved all my colleagues and classmates in law school. I love my colleagues that are attorneys. They're all very smart people, but they are skewed heavily left. My class, even in Indiana, was a 90% arguably left. And these are the people that are going to be the lawmakers. These are the people that are going to be the judges. These are the people that are going to be writing the laws. And so we have to be very cognizant of the fact that we have a tough path coming, a tough 10 to 20 years for one. So we have to figure out how we can, one, prevent that, and how we can stop that. So I think whether it's a establishment right or new establishment right, I think it's an important point. And on that point, let me add this. And I think you brought up a good point. One of my beacons, let's say, that I always kind of gauge any candidate is whether to determine whether they're establishment or anti-establishment, whether they're for the people or for special interests, is foreign policy. You tend to see, and this is again speaking from a little bit more personal experience with watching the stuff that happened with the 90s and from Yugoslavia, kind of all the wars here in the nation building in the Middle East, and all these conflicts. And the thing that really separated Trump from everybody else, and that it's kind of seemed like, with everything else they can kind of get along with in many ways, but it was the foreign policy aspect. And I've noticed that that's one of the points that I always look at. What is the foreign policy of the candidate? And that is essentially kind of tying back to what we're talking about. My big question mark for Ron DeSantis.
Yes, we have nothing to go on.
And his legislative history has been a little bit more in line with the neocon type of foreign policy. And that's a red flag for me. And so would like to know more. And so that's why right now I'm more leaning Trump, is because with Trump, I know 100% what we're going to get on a foreign policy perspective. And
okay, so
from that perspective,
what would DeSantis have to do? What would DeSantis have to do to move you on that one issue? What would he have to do to win your vote on that?
I think he's got to, in many ways, just adopt Trump's foreign policy. This anti-war, more, let's say, libertarian type America First, where we're not engaging in these humanitarian nation-building wars when we have 31 trillion in debt in the United States. We have our cities are crumbling, and the communities that we're allegedly supposed to be caring about are struggling the most as a result of this. And we're sending money, 38 billion now. Again, we're going to be sending to Ukraine. We're stirring tension with China and Taiwan. And I'm not a fan of China, but I also think we need to be strategic here. Poking the Russian bear or poking the panda, as we would say, right? The joke is not a great strategy here when we have all this internal conflict that's going on, instability here, crime here. We have the money that could be used overseas we need to bring it here. We need to use it here. And so I think in many ways, if I see, and I expect that, right? He's not running for president yet. And one of the things that I saw when they were really starting to try to dig into the DeSantis when the Ukraine war started, they were asking him, well, why isn't he saying anything? What is his position on that? And I saw, his press secretary at the time, Christina Pushaw, was saying, look, DeSantis is the governor of Florida. He's not making any foreign policy decisions. He's not in Congress. He's not in control of a budget. He's focused on the people of Florida. He doesn't have to come out. And I think that was a great strategy, but it also, for what the role he was doing and for his reelection was a great strategy. But if he wants to be the next America First candidate and he's the next Trump, and he can kind of represent that foreign policy, I think, for me, that would really start to tip the scales.
What that underscores a little bit of the manipulation I don't like, though, is that when you have an entire chorus of paid for people, paid for in one way or the other, right? And let me couch that for just a second, is that there's a lot of ways to pay an influencer, and you don't have to cut them a check, right? There's a lot of, it's more of a circuit, if you will, right? Is you have a lot of opportunities for an influencer that will open up for you if you preach the right message, and will close for you if you do not. And I'm going to be honest with you, school choice is one of those issues, because there's and again, I am not dogmatic, but I don't like it when people don't answer questions. That pisses me off and will make me go after you. If I'm going to go out and ask Corey DeAngelis a question that is done in good faith, but may screw up one of your talking points, don't send your horde at me. You will make an enemy of me just because you're a coward, right? And I will keep asking the question you don't want me to ask as loud as I possibly can, because you don't want me to ask it, because that's an indication to me that the question needs to be asked, right? And 100%. So I don't like that kind of dodge, that political dodge from a guy who will run for president. Everyone knows he's going to run. And so this kind of political answer of, well, he's the governor of Florida, then get all of your influencers and your $200 million to shut up for a while until you're ready to talk, brother. That's my thing. So I don't like that manipulation. And
I think it would have been, I think it would have done very well, at least to say that. Yeah. Come out and say, people, let's have some unity. Regardless of what Trump is saying about me, we need unity right now. And then I think that would have been such a great move by him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it would, but I'm talking about you just earlier about the Ukraine war and all of that, and I get
Yeah.
that. But his hat is in the ring, even if he hasn't thrown it in yet. Just like everybody knew that Trump was running before yesterday,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean, let's be real about this for a second. Let's take off our narrative caps and our paid influencer caps, which none of us are. But it's like,
I wish I was.
me too, brother. I've tried, but it's hard to be somebody who will make the circuit if you're not willing to bend on the manipulation it takes to do it. And that's okay. And I'm not beating up anybody. I have friends who are being very successful and that preach a good message and have a good intent and goal, but they're on the circuit, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm interested in is don't woke the right. That's what I don't want to see. Don't manipulate the populace the same way the woke did, and I'm gonna be fine with you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If you gotta throw out some talking points, I get it. You got to throw out some marketing, I understand. But we're talking about who's going to be the leader of the Republican Party and likely the next leader of the free world. Can we just, at least in our own primary, let the guys be real with each other, have them be real with their voters, and let the left do the crazy stuff? You know what I mean? Let the
That's
left
right.
do the lying. That's all I want. That's all I want. So,
And that's what separates Trump. That's
exactly
the separating factor. That's what is my biggest appeal and why I still feel comfortable with him. Because of that fact, for better or worse, regardless of whether he can articulate the ideas or not, he's going to tell you exactly what he's thinking. He's not going to hide it. He's not going to give you what you want to hear. He's going to say exactly what he believes. And, you can agree or not, but authenticity is the currency of the 21st century, of the time that we live in.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
That is what is going to attract people. Are you real? And if you're real, that means you're representing who you say you are. And you're not doing other interests. And that's where Trump has that X factor. Is he's real and he's authentic. He's not going to hide what he's saying, and he believes it. And you can believe that he believes it,
right?
Right.
That's what gets him in trouble. Is that when everybody says, and this is another little manipulation, or just a spin machine, right? And you're never going to get rid of it. But it's like the people who were saying Trump is crazy, you can't vote for him, were the same people saying that his announcement yesterday lacked energy.
Energy, right?
It's like, come on.
You can't win.
If he would have been out there going off the rails, it would have been like, don't vote for him because he's nuts. Now it's like, he's too old. What thoughts?
I mean, it's irrational. It's irrational, and it just shows that from day one, when it came to President Trump, it never was real. There was no truth behind any of it. It's shocking. The views and positions. I always feel like when I kind of get into discussions or arguments with those on the left, it's like, hey, you got to. Do you understand that we're like basically the America First movement's agreeing with you on many things? The only thing that we're not agreeing with you on is the woke ideology stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the party of the working class, right? Supporting the working class, bringing back manufacturing, building up our infrastructure. What liberals the left used to believe, being anti-war and not getting involved in Vietnam, right? The Noam Chomskys of the world. And that used to be what they believed in too. And that's what we're on. And the only thing that's separating Trump from any of that is the woke and the CRT, right? CRT, gender ideology. Apart from that, you would think that they would have supported him, and they loved Trump before 2016. It wasn't until he came in that they started attacking him. But then you start to understand, why did they start attacking him? Even if he's pushing the agenda that he's pushing, because the apparatus was in danger, the machine, the establishment was in danger, that the demographics, particularly for the Democratic Party, were at threat of joining the Republican Party and the American First movement. The African Americans, Hispanics, women, those are historically the groups that are voting for the Democrats. And now you have Trump, who's an entertaining figure that everybody loves. Now he's starting to pull that message, some of those talking points from the Democrats and from the left, adopting them for the right, and essentially, in a way, might have thrown the Democratic Party and the establishment into non-existence, demolished it fully. And so there was a lot of that manipulation coming from there.
Well, I think Dave Chappelle really hit. If you watched his SNL monologue,
it was great.
Not the part that got all the attention about Kanye, but
of course,
but where he's explaining the rise of Trump, and he says, he called him an honest liar.
Yeah,
that is an amazingly correct characterization of Trump, is that he will be honest with you about the lies. It's like, he will jump out there and say, I'm not going to pay taxes because it would be stupid for me to pay the taxes. But the person on the other side of the stage is lying to you about the fact that they're going to change it because they do the same thing I do. They're just not telling you about it. Right.
And you're the one that's not benefiting from it.
Exactly. And that is what I think it's Dave Chappelle is in so much, in a way that George Carlin was, or in the way that Johnny Carson was at different times, or, some of the comedian, he's a soothsayer. He's going right at the heart of it. Right. Which is we need somebody who's willing to not lie to us about how he has benefited from the system that keeps everybody down. Right.
Yeah.
And the reason why the middle class is gone is because, mid-70s, early to mid-70s, there seemed to be this agreement between Republicans and Democrats that, okay, we're going to just kind of abandon any lookout for the lower people on the sphere of influences here, the people we're supposed to look out for. And we're going to make this system as profitable for us as we possibly can. And we're going to do that by putting pulling the wool over their eyes, over the people's eyes, by having constant conflict between the two parties over shit that doesn't matter. Right. I mean, it's like, and that's what I think Trump broke down. And I'm concerned. Here's my concern with DeSantis. And I tend to lean DeSantis, is that DeSantis has not been tried to show that he will do that. And I think there have been great politicians or great leaders that have had the opportunity to do that, but when they get hit in the face with the monster that has attacked Trump, they buckle. And there's nothing between now and 2024 that can happen to show that DeSantis won't do the same thing.
I think that's exactly a great point. And that was one of the points that I highlighted from last night's Trump speech, when he said that quote about who he has been attacked by: the media, the woke corporations, the special interests, the onslaught that he's faced, the weaponization of federal agencies against him, and
term limits for Congress,
all of those things. Is that the fact that he's even survived to this point is shocking. How they have nitpicked on him. That should be enough to show people that he is not the greedy criminal person that they're portraying him as. Because if he was, they would have had him in 2017.
Yeah,
they would have had him right from the beginning. They would have dug something up from the 90s or the 2000s and got it on it. And right now they're running how many cases he's got in 3 or 4 states. He's got grand juries and investigations being kind of run against him. And they're going to go after him for what, these documents that they're alleging were confidential?
Well, and that was the thing they had a problem with, is that Trump has been in the public eye since 1972, right? and all of his biggest mistakes have been public. You know what I mean? It's like, and it made it very difficult for them. In one way, it made it easy for them to paint him as a certain person, right?
Yeah.
For correct or not. But it also made it difficult for them to get anything to stick, because everybody was used to forgiving Donald Trump. Because, whether it's, cheating on Ivanka, or, losing all that money in Jersey, or, what I'm saying?
Trump steak, right, or whatever it was.
Right. It was all public. And it was public before a lot of us were born, right?
Yeah.
It's in the ether. And so that's another thing that concerns me too about DeSantis is he's got skeletons, I'm sure, just like anybody else does.
Yeah.
And how is he going to be able to weather that kind of storm? And what could there be in that we don't know about that could make him buckle?
I hate being a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah,
and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I'm not going to say a conspiracy theory, but it's clear that there's under attack. And he's got kids. He's got a wife. One of the things that I always think about, probably one of the reasons that I haven't run for office yet is the looming fact of what that is going to mean for my family.
Yeah.
Right.
You're signing up for abuse.
You're signing up for abuse. And look, just like DeSantis, I'm sure, and just like me, we can take it, right? But it's the things that the levers that they will pull on DeSantis from maybe his family or other things. That's where it gets really tough. And with little kids, especially, it's unbelievable to believe. We don't know what exactly is happening, but there's a lot of external factors that we don't know that are going on behind the scenes. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Whether it's the WEF, let's say it is the WEF, and they're influencing in some way. And who knows what kind of maneuvers that they do, whether very malicious or just a little bit of arm twisting. Can he withstand that when that all happened? And that's going to be the hard test. Whereas with Trump, he's withstood it. His family has withstood it. And not only that, he has a bone to pick now.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
And he is going to come in there. So if you're looking for a guy that's going to implement that agenda, he is going to come in there and he is going to implement that thing like it almost sounds like Trump. Implement that thing in a bigly, in a way that you'll not believe.
Bigly and hugely. And yes. But here's the thing. I'm glad you brought that up because the for Trump narrative, like he's doing this for him, it's all retribution to get this back, is always used as a kind of a pejorative.
Yeah.
But the author that wrote, I can't think of his name right now. He wrote all the books on LBJ.
Okay.
Robert Caro talked about LBJ and when he was most effective. You like the guy or not, he was the most effective political maneuverer and political operator, maybe in the history of the United States. But Robert Caro put it this way. He said, when LBJ put his ambition and his search for power overtook what he thought was morally good, his search for power always won because that was the driving force for him. His ambition, his way of his desire to gain and keep and use power was the goal. But that didn't mean he didn't have a moral side. So when LBJ found issues for which his search for power and his feeling for moral good combined, say in the civil rights movement, that's when he was the most effective, is because you had this merge of his ambition and what he wanted. Maybe it was to take someone down. Maybe it was to, become president. Maybe it was to, do something for himself, make himself rich. But if that aligned with something morally good, like the civil rights movement, that's when he was most effective. That's the way I see Trump in this.
Yes.
I don't think that him having a bone to pick is a net negative. I think it is a net positive because it wraps around the agenda that I think will help keep people more directly free from the influences that seek to control us on a minute scale across the country. That's why I see it. I think what you just said was perfect. It's not a bad thing to have a bone to pick because it means he's not going to stop, right?
Those are I'm so glad you tied in because I didn't even know about the historical comparisons with it. Now I'm really interested in reading more about that because that's one of the things that even I see in myself, not to boost myself up, is the fact that I am ambitious too. And but I'm driven by this. The reason I'm ambitious, I would love to be just a regular guy. I don't want the stress, but I want to do good. And if you can combine those two, you can do positive things. And that's where, like you said, with Trump, that's what he's doing. And it doesn't mean that DeSantis is not that guy. People that are that look, and they have to be. They have to be ruthless and tough. And if they're driven by by good, they can do great things. That's how all the great leaders throughout history have been. And DeSantis has not made us to this point yet have any reason to doubt that that's him either, and that he's going to be that guy. So maybe he'll be the guy too, and maybe he'll be able to capitalize on doing that. And because I do really believe that he believes in the message. It's not that I don't think that he doesn't. It's that when that pressure levers start coming and the tax and they start tightening, is he going to be the guy who's going to go along?
Used to say, when it comes to nut cutting time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. When it comes to nut cutting time, what are you going to do? And are you going to be able? Because that's the one thing about Trump, is that he has put his entire family on the line. He's put his business, his wealth, and sustained an amount of attack that I think is unparalleled.
His legacy is on the line.
Yeah.
That's go ahead. No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say legacy is, I think, for many men, if we're looking, I know that we're trying to feminize men these days, unfortunately. And I think that's why we have a lot of issues because of that fact. We're trying to invert the sexes and invert the qualities that are the beautiful things in both the sexes. For men, a driving factor is leaving a legacy. And that is where Trump's legacy is on the line here. Because, and I put that in that tweet that I said what I wanted DeSantis to hear is that DeSantis to say is to reiterate to Trump, if he is going against him, that we will not forget, and that loyalty, that we will not forget what you have sacrificed to do what you did, to put us in the position. And that's going back to what we were talking about earlier with these influencers on the right. And I love those guys. I'm a subscriber to Daily Wire Plus. I love the work that they're doing. And everything else I love. And they've been speaking on the war in Ukraine and all those things. But they're forgetting a critical thing. And that's something that needs to unite men. It's something that needs to unite Americans, is that when somebody puts themselves out on the line, we need to stand behind that person and support them. Not the second that things get tough, just throw them to the side like everybody else. Because what are you doing in that way?
Man, and I'll speak from personal experience here. That is an all too common mistake on the right, the unwoke crowd, if you will, which I've been a part of since, pretty close to the beginning, at least, and is that the moment there's a sign of trouble, everybody leaves. You know what I mean? Instead, the left doesn't do that. The left, it's like, if you could kill your dog and and wag him around and use him as a hula hoop if you wanted on the left, and if they were pushing a political what they saw as a political advantageous goal, right? They would back them up. And we've seen it over and over again, over and over again, we've seen it. And the right doesn't do that, but partly because I think the right has standards, but also because it's like, well, I don't want to be associated, because the right has standards. I don't want to be associated with anybody who might have a bad, something that comes up, right? Or that even just people are saying incorrect things about them, right? Or false things about them. They're buying into a narrative, right? The right just runs away. Oh, I gotta leave, and it's like that way. If you're expecting perfect, and that's just something I want people to know about DeSantis, whatever comes out about him, because there will be things that come out about him because he's not run for president yet, which means that people don't know everything about him yet. They will, but is that if you're expecting perfect warriors, you're going to lose the battle. And men who have been in the arena, right, and who stand up even when it's not good for them, even when they've sacrificed, and I identify with this too. It's like, I'm a freaking choir director, man. Like, all I wanted to do was go be a choir director. Like
Yeah.
I'm literally a choir boy. Okay, I'm literally that. But my profession is gone. It's over. And
Yeah.
I knew the minute that I came out and said something publicly that whatever chance I had at that profession is now completely gone because I wanted to be a college choir director. But it's like this. Anybody who's willing to do what you're doing right now, what Trump has done, what I think DeSantis is doing, needs to get the benefit of the doubt a little bit and say, look, guys, it's not going to be perfect, but he's here. And that's the
Yeah.
thing about Trump that I think a lot of people are hitting on too, is that it's not because they think Trump is he deserves it. It's that he's put in the damn work for it. He's made the sacrifice for it. And men, let's respect that kind of thing. I think you're exactly right there.
Yeah, respect. And one of the things I think we need to, we even on the right, the biggest problem on the right is we have been poisoned by consumerism and materialism. And we've forgotten the classics. What made great men? What made great heroes? And it wasn't
perfection.
And it wasn't perfection, but it was the willingness to sacrifice. And not just the willingness to sacrifice. In my Twitter bio, I have one of my favorite little phrases: "Memento mori." Remember that you will die.
Yeah.
Remember that you will die. So all of the things that you are now, if they're selling out, whoever's selling out, if they are or not, if they're doing it for monetary gain or whatever. Look, I get it. We have to feed our families and stuff. Don't get me wrong. And we want to have a comfortable life. We want to have a good life for our kids. But if there is a minimum level that you should be satisfied with in the world that we live in, because there are ultimately more important things. And to the people that do think about, I want to leave a good life for my kids, you have to recognize that in the world that we are living in, just leaving them money or a house is not going to be enough. They're attacking our being. They are attacking who we are as humans. Humanity.
They're attacking your connection to kids. Your kids.
With kids, yes. As parents, they're severing all the ties. They're severing the beauty. They don't want the beauty of being a parent, the beauty of being a biological parent anymore. They want to have us as digital transhumans. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the reality. Right. And this is not so as much as you want to have all these great material assets and you think you're setting your kids up for something great down the line, you're not. You're going to set your kids up in a great way is if you fight to prevent them from having to live in the dystopian, technocratic world where they are literally hooked up like in the Matrix. And this is what this whole battle is about here. It's not about Trump and DeSantis and the left and the right and all this. We are fighting literally for the essence of humanity. And I'm not trying to be, grandizing these things. This is exactly what this is. Because, people like me and you that understand these things, people that are dig into this stuff, that made these sacrifices, did it for a reason. Because we understand what's on the horizon. You can recognize patterns. You can recognize where the future is going. And we're trying to put a stop to this. And it's, DeSantis and Trump, either of them are small figures in this. They're the people that lead the charge, but it's got to be all of us. And, bring it back. And I'm sorry for rambling on that. I'm just so passionate about that point because I don't realize, I don't think people are realizing the threat that we're facing and why I get, riled up in this. And, when you said it earlier, I can't remember where I read it in an email or one of the newsletters today. It might have even been Political, to be quite honest, or even the Wall Street Journal. There was the newsletter said, people on the left do not think their candidates sell out.
Yeah.
And on the right, and on the right, we think ours cut deals and are pragmatic.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, typifies exactly the message. The left is willing to do whatever is needed to get their agenda done.
Yep.
Whether they even know where they're pushing or not, they
don't care about hypocrisy. They don't care at all. I
was in Florida the weekend before the election, and there were leftist activists on the streets everywhere I was in the Tampa area signing people, trying to get people to sign up to vote or asking them if they were going to vote or trying to change their opinions. How many, they're the ones that are getting in the streets. They're the ones that are doing the activist work. and doing, trying to change people's minds. We're not doing that. We're not willing to sacrifice because, again, for us, and it might be a personality thing, right? The conservative personality, more focused on security and all these things. We're not doing those things and not willing to sacrifice as much of our time as maybe the left is. And when that opportunity presents itself,
right? You're busy working, and
bingo.
Yeah, but I think you hit on a point there. What I've noticed is that conservatives, talking about the political class for a second, is all politicians want adulation and they want to be able to take credit for things. But the left has developed a political class that gets that adulation in a different way. The right is still stuck in the politicians have to be the ones that fix the problem.
Yes.
So they have to be viewed that way. And the left doesn't anymore. Like AOC has never fixed a problem in her life, but she's hugely popular, right? Joe Biden hasn't fixed anything, but he's the paragon of all things woke and true because he's there as a breathing body pushing an agenda. The left doesn't care about what you actually accomplish or who gets the credit.
Yes.
Truman, you said, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit, right? But the right, they actually knock down their activists in many ways sometimes because the politicians want to be the ones who go in and fix it, right? And then look at me, now let me give you your vote. And this is especially on a local level when you're talking about red states, right? Because it's all currency. It's like Oklahoma's about 15 years behind everything when it comes to the way that politics are done like that. And it may be different in other states, but
I think it's similar in Indiana.
Yeah, I think it's similar in Indiana. And if you know Alvin Louis, he's spoken to that before, but courage is a habit, and it's similar, but you don't have the need by leftist politicians to be the activists too, right? And the right guards their message really, really, really closely, and you see this kind of hierarchy that goes to it. I don't remember what my point was, but other than just to say, the right doesn't support their activists, and they have a litmus test that leftist activists do not have, and so there's just more of them.
And we saw the consequences of that in these elections.
Yeah.
So that's part of my problem here. Not 18 to 29, but not just that. Everyone's trying to blame Trump, right? That's the scapegoat. Yeah. But what about the ground infrastructure?
Mm-hmm.
We knew. Look, the right and the Republicans did a much better job preparing for these elections than they learned They learned some lessons in 2020. They tried to change some election laws. Florida did a fantastic job. Governor DeSantis did a fantastic job. Florida GOP did a fantastic job tightening up their election system. Other states, Georgia tightened up their voter laws. Pennsylvania tried in some ways, in terms of the signing and the dates. So the right started doing the right things, but they didn't. We knew that they were still going to do the mail-in ballots.
Right.
And we knew that they were going to ballot harvest.
Yep.
And we still lived in this dream world of we're the people of principle. And that's admirable. That's admirable. Don't get me wrong. But you are in a dogfight, my friend. And if you're going to be in a dogfight, you have to be willing to fight. And you have to be able to get down and dirty. And that's what we have to do. And getting down and dirty means you have to put in time. You have to put in effort. And we need leadership to direct. And we need, leadership to direct to actually do the things that we need to get done, not, placate and pretend that, just say the things that we want to hear, but actually have a strategy.
And I agree with you. And this is something that I was actually saying a long time ago, that years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, that we have to build a conservative activist base. But here's the problem. This is the one thing I cannot tolerate. You can get in, you can fight and get down dirty and some of those things. But when you talk about starting to deceive your own voters, if they're going to ballot harvest, let's ballot harvest. I get it. I got it. But in terms of like creating your own narratives out of thin air, That's something I don't think is good for the progression. And this is what I see some of the right starting to do, is create narratives out of thin air to, it's Machiavellianism. It's the
Yeah.
ends justify the means. But the means in this situation, if you start grabbing the woke narrative making, because that's what the woke did to take over institutions. They did that. It's like, oh, defund the police. Oh, there's thousands of people being killed, but really there was only 9. It's like they created a narrative that did damage to society and enabled
Yes.
them to grab a hold of institutions they had no right to grab a hold of and wouldn't have grabbed a hold of before. But the right has taken now, some of the right, not all of the right, has taken to creating its own narratives in the same way, and therefore lying to people that value truth. The reason why the left could do that is because the left didn't value truth. People on the right do.
Yes.
Conservatives do value what is actually true, and you will lose them, influencers on the right. You will lose them if they find out you're lying. So we've got enough to work with the left. You know what I mean?
That's right.
We don't have to make shit up. We
exactly.
don't need to. So that's my only couch to that is, yes, get in, fight the dog fight. If they're going to ballot harvest in the places that we can't get rid of it, we need to do the same damn thing. But we don't need to create complete narratives out of whole cloth in this Machiavellian sense of, the ends justify the means, because that is I don't like the term slippery slope, but it's a stacked incentive towards just going woke ourselves. Thoughts?
I think that's a great point, and I agree with you. And as you said, we have enough support for the truth to not have to make up the narratives. And all that's a matter is of being strategic with how we use the truth and which stories we emphasize and which part of the story we emphasize, or the part of the truth we emphasize, right? And so I think that's I think you're 100% on point when it comes to that.
Yeah. Well, because of how I got involved here, and the reason my channel exists is this whole postmodern sentiment of there's no objective truth. There's no, if our kids live in that world, the right doing it too perpetuates that world, just like you were saying a minute ago, right? Just like you were saying just a minute ago, which is that we're going to leave them with a world that money won't matter or the house won't matter. If we leave them in a world where we have no objective truth, where they can't rely on anything because both sides are lying to them constantly, that's what creates a lot of the mental imbalance that we have, right? It is.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to be careful about the right that we don't do. And that's why I like Trump in terms of he doesn't really do that. He doesn't spin things. He just talks and then lets other people clean it up. And DeSantis is a little more establishment. And when let's take this all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah.
You said that Balkanization happened because you had a thesis and an antithesis of narratives in Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
That the establishment used to drive the people nuts and turn them on each other.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm saying is that's what I see happening with DeSantis and Trump right now, and the influencers who are literally pitting us against each other, whether that's coming from, whomever, it doesn't really matter. We've got to be smart enough to delve through it. Don't you think?
And the reason that that's important is not just because of internally. It's because, look, the world is changing. China, India, the global South in general, they are, Nigeria is going to be the most populous nation in the world by 2050. The world is changing. The demographics of the world is changing. The countries that have the skills, one of the things I always say, it shocks me because maybe, I think Americans, we've had it so good for so long that we don't see what's happening in the rest of the world. And I was watching a video and I shared it. It was a small thing. It was a group of Chinese kids. They were 4 years old, like 4 to 5 years old. They were dribbling two basketballs in unison. It was like 30 of them dribbling in unison and doing all these various tricks. Now, it sounds stupid, But if you look deeper, what that means is we're arguing about whether or not that 4-year-old can identify as one or the other gender. And the Chinese are teaching them teamwork, unity, skills, building, how to aspiration, having a goal, and all this stuff. Whether if we're not focusing in on the truth, that's dangerous for us, because someone's got to build something. Someone's got to have real things to do here. We can't just all be managers and social media influencers, and whatever the case may be. We actually need people to work, and we need people to have skills. And so that's why we need to focus on the internal stuff. We have to realize that it's going to have consequences, because the rest of the world is coming. We have the multipolar world is on our heels. There's a reason Saudi Arabia is pushing back on us. That India, we've been relying on for since after World War II, essentially is now being more neutral. But trading, which if it wasn't for India, Russia would not be able to trade right now. They wouldn't have the economy that they have. The South America, how many countries have switched regimes and are supporting a multipolar world and have socialist regimes? Africa, China's building the Silk Belt and Road Initiative. They're creating alliances. They're being strategic by in advance of us, and we're here fighting with each other. And we're going around the world and acting as bullies. It's a recipe for disaster. So we got to think smarter.
Yeah. Well, and you've got to be, the more modern sense of the word pragmatic. But pragmatism, pragmatism, if you go back to the original meaning of the word, has a more nefarious, and so there's a line. That's all I'm saying is that, and I agree with you. And I made the same case many times, but I like to play devil's advocate. Okay.
Yeah, please.
And
I love it. These are the conversations I love to have.
I know it's we cannot become the Hegelian right. That's all I'm saying is that, creating reality out of whole cloth in order to be able to compete with a rigged global system, if you want to talk about it, because China has built a stakeholder capitalism that is very, pardon me, it's free to those who it approves and not free to those who it doesn't.
Not that much different from us, though, I would argue.
Right. No, I agree with that. But they do that by attacking the mind of man.
Yes.
Right. They do that by attacking. Here's a good example. TikTok. Right. TikTok in China, if you're 14 and under, TikTok is limited to 40 minutes a day. And you get 3 subjects. You get math, science, and patriotism. Those are the only videos that are filtered through it. That's what the kids see. In America, it's obviously not the case, right? If you take, there was a poll that was done, and the Chinese kids, what they wanted to be, the most common thing was an astronaut, right? And American kids, the most common thing they wanted to be was a social media influencer, right? So there are some safeguards we can put in there, and our kids are the most vulnerable. What I don't like is the government or parties or anybody left or right treating adults like they're children and trying to trick them into believing something that isn't real. Because I subscribe to the Thomas Jefferson notion that I have declared eternal hostility on any form of tyranny over the mind of man. Tyranny over the mind of man means you lying to me while claiming to be my friend, or you lying to me while claiming to be selling something that you're trying to sell something different. That I don't like the spin. And now we have come into a situation where both sides are doing it on the level. And that's what, if we're going to bring this home, the Trump DeSantis people have done. Trump came out and said, basically, I'm pretty pissed at DeSantis right now because he's doing some stuff I don't like. Ron DeSanctimonious. That was him doing that. And the whole group of people that I like and respect went Hegelian on us. They went woke indoctrination messaging on the whole thing because we must paint this narrative in order to get the best candidate in. I'm tired of that bullshit. I'm tired of it. What I want is the two guys who I think are both very good candidates. I don't
Yes.
think that we could go wrong with either one of them. I want them on a stage. Shut up, you stupid influencers. Shut up. Get them out on the stage. Let them go for it. Let's start now. Let them dig through it and create the best candidate, because iron sharpens iron.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. I don't mess with my mind the same way I don't want you doing it with our kids. I don't want you doing it to me or my friends or my family or my wife or my friends or my brother or anybody else. That's all I'm saying. And I think that's what I saw you on Twitter when I asked you to come on, was hitting on that point. You know what I mean? Was just hitting a little bit on that point. At least that you were out there saying, hey guys, both these guys are good. Why are you trying to divide us? Where is this coming from? Where is it coming from? Where do you think it's coming from? If you had to make a guess right now, so put on your tinfoil hat. Do you think that it's the establishment? Do you think it's the actual DeSantis people? Do you think it's the Democrats, Russian botting us? Where do you think it's coming from?
I don't think we can pinpoint. And I think that's why even our discussion here is nuanced itself.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so many factors that are playing in, both in reality, I think both that are driving people personally, the influence, whether monetarily or materially, the fear of losing power in the Democrats. I think it's all combined. The greater agenda. Is it the WEF agenda?
Yeah.
Is Trump not aligning with that? Is it the military-industrial complex? I think it's. You could say everyone, and that's the problem.
Yes.
Everyone is. I agree, and I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's the biggest problem. Sorry, and that's the biggest problem is that I think everyone has had their hands too much in the American cookie jar.
Yeah.
And that none of it is in the interest of the American people. And that's the message that I tying it back to what we're talking about, support Trump about. I think he's pointing to the fact that this attack is not DeSantis, it's all of these entities that have their own interests, that are digging at us, picking at us, using us, and not thinking about what's for the greater good or what's positive and what's going to move us forward.
Yeah.
So I know maybe it's a cop-out, but
no,
I don't think it's all a factor of everything in together, because I think that's human nature.
Yeah, I don't think it's a cop-out. I don't think it's a cop-out. I think you're right. It's the one thing I've learned is it's never all one thing. That's the part of the manipulation here, right? It's
yes.
Like, it's all them, or it's all them, and it's all them. And when you get into election times, which, the 24 election started the day after this one, or maybe even a couple days before this one, with Trump's comment on DeSantis, is that it's never all one thing. The truth doesn't lie in just someone's unique, distinct interpretation of it. And that the truth of that can't be understated. That is maybe the one constant truth, is that it's never all just one thing. But
yeah,
I think it takes us being honest with each other. That's what I want to see more of, because I think we can actually be the good we're trying to produce. And maybe that, I don't know, some kind of like pie in the sky, I don't know what it is, but as somebody who's made mistakes in my life, right? I think we all have.
All of us.
Anybody who's lived a life has made mistakes in their life. It's important to me to be the good that I want to do, because of the mistakes I've made. It's you want to be better than you were yesterday. That's what I want to see from people and from our influencers. And just be the good. Be the good, and I think that will help. And I sound a little bit like, oh gosh, what's his name? He's on Lex Friedman. He's kind of got this
Lex Friedman.
He's the super nice guy.
Yeah.
And trust me, I've never been accused of being the nicest guy in the room. I'm actively not the nicest guy in the room.
I wouldn't have guessed that from our conversation, but maybe that's because we agree on more things than not.
No. But I can go. I just don't like being lied to, and that's all. That's what I don't like being. And what I hope DeSantis takes from Trump is that, like it or not, the left can say whatever about him. He's really kind of honest to a fault, to the point that it hurts him. Right? It just hurts him.
Yeah.
and he talks too much.
Just
I want to be
DeSantis, just be authentic. I think you said it perfectly.
Yes,
That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
If I see that authenticity, I mean, he's going to have a great political career.
Mm-hmm.
He's a young guy. He's going to be able to be a mentor to hundreds of new leaders on the right.
That's right.
And again, he should. If he hears this, I don't know. If somebody hears this,
I doubt anybody's watching me, but you never know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Play the long term.
Yeah.
Play the long term. Your legacy will be built on the long term here. Don't think about just what's going to get you in the short term, because what you can do in 30 to 40 years is going to be much more than what you're going to be able to do in 8 or 4.
He's half Trump's age.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. I mean, he's literally half. And I think that's where, Obama, he came in, it was pretty much the same age as DeSantis is now. And
he's built an army.
He has built an army, but
Let's not kid ourselves.
He peaked early. I mean, he could have gotten more done, so to speak. He was a transformative figure.
Yes.
Not in the right way. But he could have gotten more done had he, had a bit more patience, but he may have gotten Chris Christie'd. You know what I mean? That's the thing too. I want to point that out, is that people are like, well, DeSantis needs to wait. They said that to Chris Christie, and look what happened to that guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, he's gone. And he's not running for anything or winning anything because he let his moment pass. And that's part of where I go. It's like, if we want DeSantis to be a transformative figure, is this his moment? What do you think? Could it be?
I think I've thought about that as well. And I, because I try to put myself in everyone's shoes always and think about how he's looking at it. He has tremendous momentum. And so there is a roll of the dice. Let's be serious. There is a roll of the dice. If you have this momentum and you delay in 2 years, you delay this, it's 2024, 2028, that's 6 years from now. What could be in 6 years? I'm so glad, his wife recovered from her illness.
Yes.
And it's so great. And so, those are all, again, these are all things that are, I'm sure if I'm putting myself in his shoes, they're going through his mind. What if something goes wrong? Or what if somebody, a new DeSantis comes that's even better than me or something,
right.
These are all possibilities. Mm-hmm. And right now it seems like the red carpet's rolled out.
Yeah.
And people want me to run on the right and people on the left don't want Trump. Mm-hmm. And this might be my opportunity. And maybe I need to capitalize it. And I'm sure he should think about that. And he should be thinking about that.
He should.
And
absolutely.
And I don't, but again, it's just one of those things. I trust. He's very smart and he's much smarter than me, I'm sure. And so I hope he's just thinking through both short-term, long-term, taking everything into account and being sure that whatever decision he makes and however he holds himself and presents himself, that he's doing it for the best interest of our country and for the best interest of the movement that we have all sacrificed here in the last 6 years, all of us. And that was, I loved what Trump said last night. It wasn't just me. It was all of you too that put yourselves on the line, that were attempted to be canceled, that were lost your jobs, that had to be quiet. Imagine being silenced in the greatest country in the world, the thing that we're built upon, free speech, felt to be silenced. I mean, this is stuff that was in former Yugoslavia, in communism. You had to be silenced. These DEI equity offices. These are communist based models. This is what we had. I was speaking with my father. Every company had a commissar that represented the party, and their job was to push that narrative. And that's what we have. This DEI is pushing the narrative of these of our government.
Well, and that.
Sorry, I went on a tangent there, but
you're preaching my language, man.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. That is the most ignored portion of this fight, is that apparatus. It's the bureaucratic apparatus, it's called DEI right now. It can be called student services. It can be called all kinds of different things, but it operates as a political arm designed to bridge the public-private partnership towards one moral goal. And I do get upset and I've gotten in some tiffs with a couple of my friends about people saying that DEI is marketing or that you can take it back over. It was made to eat you. It was
Yes.
literally made that the grift was made to eat you, and calling it marketing makes it marketing in the minds of people, which makes people not scared of it. Because
Yes.
marketing is something we all experience every day. And when you build that mindset into people that they don't need to be scared of it, and they don't see it for what it is, which it lives in hiring, and it lives in retention, and it lives uh, in recruitment. That's where it lives. And Obama put it into practice during in 2011 into the federal government. I wrote a whole article on it. It's called FBI, DEI, and the FBI, and it is the reason why they can go and raid Donald Trump's house as a matter of political course because they believe they're doing good because their ideology trumps their patriotism because their ideology is their new patriotism. That's what it enforces, and they've been hired since 2011. They've hired nobody else but people who agree with that ideology. That's the whole point. So I'm
He
glad for you to bring that up. Yes, they are.
he built the army. He built that
Yeah,
army, and
he did.
my
So
big
how do we
warning.
remove it?
How do we remove it? We have. I mean, that's what we were talking. I thought maybe school choice was the start, but no, it's
Well,
the way
school
to
choice
remove it is
removes the apparatus, but the teachers and the administrators are all going to be the same people. It
right.
can be. I think it can be. It could be if we take care not to keep the pipeline open. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's again. I've made some very I've made some enemies. I don't know enemies, but people on my side who've gotten very frustrated with me because I've asked these questions. All I want is for it to do what it's supposed to do.
correct.
So let's make sure we do it. But how else do you think we do it?
This is why my main point is who is the establishment.
Yeah.
You have to destroy the establishment. You have to destroy the levers of power. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
with force or anything, but you have to figure out how to. First of all, you have to figure out how it's connected, and I think we're starting to get a picture of how that's connected. And so you have to have a strategy to start cutting the ties between those different groups or
Yeah.
powers or entities or institutions. So if it's reforming the DOJ, reforming, I think we have to reform that federal agencies. That's 100% for sure. We have to reform the federal agencies, and we have to return more power to the states.
Yeah.
The reason that we've been successful in America is the federalist system, the great experiment. Because me and you in Indiana and Oklahoma, we cannot live the same life as or have the same values as someone that's living on the beach in San Francisco or
Right.
riding around in LA.
Well, that's what has kept us from balkanizing, right?
Absolutely. And that's what we have to do. We have to ensure that we protect exactly what that is. And if we don't, kind of tying it back to what we said is these things, they think it's just marketing or the ESG scores. It's all going to make it better. It's not a problem. If they're doing good, it's very. I promise you, as somebody you got anyone that hasn't read it, Václav Havel should read him and understand exactly right. When it was the part of the reason when I left the firm was and I went off my own was because I saw the BLM signs. The BLM signs were the grocers signs.
Yeah.
It wasn't that you supported it. It was that you felt that you needed to put it out there just so you weren't touched.
Yeah.
And
it's like
you're not really.
Well, it's just like putting the Passover.
Yes. Right.
Putting the mark on your door. Right.
Correct. And but what you don't realize is you think you're just putting a sign, but you're not just putting a sign. You are letting the virus infect you. And it's easy to get infected by the virus of communism. And that's what this essentially is, authoritarianism, communism. But I promise you, ask any Eastern European, ask any Serb, any Croat, any Bosniak, any Albanian. Ask anyone in Hungary, Bulgaria, all of these countries. Ask Ukraine and Russia right now, the consequences of communism. It's very hard to throw it off. And when you do even try to get close to throwing it off, there's going to be a lot of bloodshed, a lot of tears, and a lot of pain, much more than what you think you have now. Yeah. And that's what I hope that we understand with what is kind of going on here.
Well, and we also must remember, in that same vein, that fascism is an outgrowth of communism, or an outgrowth of Marxism. It's an outgrowth of Marxism, excuse me. And I've actually pushed it. I push this back, and you can document it. It all comes from the same vein. But what we're seeing now is a fascism for the elite and a communism for the lower end of people. And it's this kind
Yes.
of communo-fascism. You listen to James
Yes.
Levy and all that. You know,
Yes.
you can see that. So we just must be aware. And I think my recommendation has always been think for yourself. Think for yourself. Don't just buy it because your tribe buys it.
Yeah.
And be willing to stand up. And here's my other thing is I really would like people on our side of the spectrum, so to speak, if you want to put it that way. I think we can get more people from the other side of the spectrum if we were more willing to have the open conversations with each other and not just dismiss each other as being, well, I don't like the way you talk. That's the other part about the Trump versus DeSantis issue here that I don't like. It's the mean tweet argument.
Yes.
Right. You need a wrecking ball. What is it that Jordan Peterson says? You need a monster. You need a tamed monster and somebody that can go out. And that's what I don't want to see the right doing either, to either one, DeSantis or Trump, is using this, well, they're mean, they say bad things, quite frankly, I want somebody who's going to go out there and just say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And I think you brought up Jordan Peterson, and it's like we were on the same wavelength there. Yeah. Because I was thinking Jordan Peterson at the exact moment as well. And how it was coming up for me is when you said speak up and be unafraid to engage, because as Jordan Peterson says, the consequences you will face now for speaking the truth will be much less severe than the consequences down the line if you choose not to.
That's right.
And that is a key point here. And so whether that's speaking the truth to you, even among ourselves, right? The DeSantis, Trump people, and making them feel uncomfortable and kind of bringing them down a notch and realizing, hey, we need to start analyzing this from with nuance. And so we have a good strategy, or it's with the other side. Look, and I know, I get it. Time is limited. It sometimes feels like you're, as they say, beating a dead horse, and you sometimes avoid engaging. But I always try to engage. If I see that someone responds at least somewhat intellectually, and not with the name calling or an insult, I will at least try to engage for, let's say, 5 minutes. And I'll give one argument or two, one reply tweet or two reply tweets, and try to at least, if not anything, not convince them, humanize me.
Yeah.
Because if that, losing the humanization is how we get to these where ideology becomes, as you know, into harming people, unfortunately.
Well, you're absolutely right, and your perspective is really valuable. And bringing you on here, I just read some of your background and read a lot of your tweets, and lurked and here and there, and we've talked in DMs. If there's anybody watching at the moment that wants to ask a question, go ahead, and we got super chats are open. Like and share the channel and all of that kind of stuff. I hate doing that, to be honest. But
looks like we have a similar character, my friend.
Yeah. Do you have any closing arguments that you'd like to say, my audience, anybody who may watch this in the future, that we need to be doing from this day forward, from now until November 5th of 2024? What does the right need to do? What does the DeSantis Trump camp need to do to ensure that we are victorious in that election and beyond?
I mean, that could be a thesis, a dissertation in itself. But
you got 5 minutes, man. So
oh, perfect.
Dump it down.
I'm going to try to summarize it. I think, first of all, the most important thing is, regardless of whether you see this as a loss or not, do not go back to old habits. Do not fall for these stories of these lukewarm republicanism, the neocon variety of republicanism. Do not fall into that. Stay on the path that we are going on, and continue the work that we're doing. We're doing the right things. It's just, we have the ideas right. Now it's just a matter of implementing them. And so the first step is, don't allow yourself to go back into the old habits. Continue forward. And now we strategize. So that means we need to build teams. Like you brought up Chris Rufo earlier, and you and James Lindsay. You guys are the tip of the spear on that, and focusing on the subjects that are really important from that perspective. The theoretical aspect of gender ideology and wokeness and CRT are things that we need to really understand, and we need to be able to counter and explain and understand how to strategize against. So we need to build those kinds of teams. Then we need the economics. We need to figure out, how do we reform our tax system? How do we reform our currency? I'm a big crypto guy.
Yeah.
One of the ways I think that we get to destroying the establishment, and why the establishment is fighting so hard. We didn't even talk about the role of FTX here, and how the Federal Reserve plays into all this.
We'll have you back on and we'll talk about that.
It's, you free the money, you free the world. You free the money, you free the world. You remove the intermediary, it's game over. And that's what they are fighting right now, to prevent themselves as the intermediaries and their relevance from being removed. And that we need to focus economically on pushing the crypto stuff. Doesn't have to be Bitcoin or whatever. It's about cryptography and blockchain, making sure that everything is on a publicly audited. You can check it. You can see where things are moving and where they're going, and installing privacy, obviously, with that, and not just everything, being able to do that, but installing the privacy tools to protect yourself. So that's, I think, from an economic standpoint. I think culturally, we need to be able to be confident to stand up to the fight that we have. You cannot be afraid. We are, I get into, people ask me, why are you so passionate about it? I'm sorry, and I'm not going to. I'm going to be blunt, and it's not going. For some people, it might be uncomfortable, but we are harming children, guys, friends, Americans. I don't care what side of the spectrum you're on. I'm a very compassionate person. I care about kids. I care about people. I care about other people's views, even if they completely disagree with me, because I know that I want them to appreciate my views. But you have to understand, you have to draw a line. We are harming kids here. And we are doing it for, I can't understand it, for this virtue signaling or feeling like this is like something that gives you value. Yes. You have to stand up. So in the culture war, stand up. Even if you don't agree with the right on some of these other things, it's okay to not feel, if it's gay marriage or, race relations, whatever, or whatever those things are, there's things that you can still agree with the right on. And that's one of those things. So stand up in the culture war, economics, not going back to old habits, and being prepared to be unified. I think those four are the messages that I would, in a short summary, I would say.
Well, good. It's a good job. It's a hard thing to do in a short amount of time. Well, Alex, I hope that we can have you back.
I would love it.
I would like to have you back on a regular basis, and because I think we have a lot to talk about. I think that I think we could argue on some things, and that would be real fun too.
That's what I'm looking forward to too.
Yeah. And
sharpening my skills on that.
Yeah, let's do it. And where can people find you, and where can they follow you?
Yeah, I was so. First of all, thank you so much, Mark, for the invite. This has been fantastic. It's 2 hours. It's felt like 2 minutes because I enjoyed the topic. And thank you. I mentioned to you before the call, I've been a lot on Serbian TV. I haven't really. I've done a couple podcasts with friends, but nothing of anybody that I didn't know until recently. And you're the first one. So I thank you for that invite. I hope that people realize why you did invite me, and that I kind of fulfilled your expectations. And so I thank you for the opportunity to chat with you. I'm glad to get to know you. If anyone wants to follow me, believe me, I recognize that the world is a busy place, and there's a lot taking your attention. So I'm not asking you to follow me, but if you do follow me, I do truly appreciate you doing that. I'm grateful for it, and I'm considerate of that. You can follow me on Twitter. That's kind of primarily where I'm at, Aleks Djuricic. The spelling is there. It's going to be difficult for me to spell it out.
Well, it's up here on the screen, so they can get it down.
You're going to need a reference, but I'm on all platforms, and I'm on all platforms for a reason, because I want to be open to people, and I want to connect with people. I genuinely enjoy meeting new people. I genuinely enjoy talking about ideas and figuring out how that we can get together and make it a better world. So thank you to everyone watching, and thank you to you, Mark.
No problem, man. It's been great, and we're going to have you back on a regular basis if we can. And when you get famous, just remember us little guys down here. All right, man.
From your mouth to God's ears, as they say.
Well, we'll see. All right. Thanks, man, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.